Picture this. You are the biggest rock star in Detroit. You wear custom-tailored suits, you date supermodels, and you just quit your million-dollar executive job because you think everyone else is building boring garbage. You promise the world a spaceship on wheels, stainless steel, gull-wing doors, completely ethical, completely indestructible. Fast forward less than 7 years later. You are sitting in a dim airport hotel room, looking at a suitcase packed with $24 million worth of pure cocaine, while federal agents bust through the door. This is not a movie plot. This is how the dream of the DeLorean Motor Company ended. Everyone loves the shiny silver time machine from the movies, but the real story? It is a total psychological thriller fueled by massive egos, terrible engineering, international political schemes, and a mountain of white powder. If you still think this car is cool, prepare to dump your nostalgia right now. Let us look at how $175 million vanished into thin air. To understand the crash, you have to understand John Zachary DeLorean. The guy was an absolute titan at General Motors. He created the Pontiac GTO, basically inventing the muscle car era. He was the youngest division head in General Motors history. But John hated the corporate suits. He hated the red tape. He wanted to build something he called the ethical sports car, something safe, long-lasting, and beautiful. So in 1975, he walked away from the Golden Throne to start his own company. He used his massive celebrity status to trick everyone into giving him cash. Hollywood stars like Sammy Davis Jr. threw hundreds of thousands of dollars at him. He convinced everyday American car dealers to buy stock just for the right to sell his future vehicle. He raised tens of millions before a single blueprint was even finalized. The hype machine was working overtime, but the actual foundation was built on quicksand from day number one. John needed a factory, and he needed it fast. He played countries against each other like a seasoned poker player, looking for the biggest government handout. Puerto Rico almost had it, but then the British government stepped in with a wild offer. They gave John over $80 million to build his factory in Dunmurry, Northern Ireland. Now think about the timing. This was the late 1970s. Northern Ireland was practically a war zone during the height of the Troubles. Unemployment was sky high and car bombs were a daily occurrence. The British government desperately wanted to bring jobs to the region to stop the violence. They thought thousands of stable manufacturing jobs would calm the tension. It was a beautiful political narrative, but from an automotive manufacturing standpoint, it was absolute madness. You had Protestants and Catholics working together, which was great, but almost none of them had ever built a car in their entire lives. Imagine trying to build a cutting-edge, high-tech sports car with a workforce that literally needs to be taught how to hold a wrench. Training took forever, and quality control was completely non-existent from the start. But the workforce was only half the problem. The original design of the car was a total technical nightmare. John hired legendary designer Giorgetto Giugiaro to style the exterior, which looked incredible. But underneath that stainless steel skin, total chaos. The original engineer completely abandoned the project because John kept changing his mind. In a panic, John went to Lotus Cars and paid them a fortune to re-engineer the entire vehicle in under 2 years. Lotus basically stripped the car down and rebuilt it using their own chassis design. By the time they were done, the revolutionary safety features were gone, and the car weighed way too much for the engine they had chosen. When the car finally rolled out of the factory in 1981, the automotive press was completely stunned, but for all the wrong reasons. It looked like a supercar, but it performed like a total grocery getter. John had chosen a 2.85-liter V6 engine developed jointly by Peugeot, Renault, and Volvo. This engine only put out a miserable 130 horsepower for the American market because of strict emissions regulations. 0 to 60 miles per hour took a painfully slow 10.5 seconds. A base model Honda Civic could almost outrun it. To make matters worse, the price tag had ballooned from the promised $12,000 to an insane $25,000. In 1981 money, that was a fortune. You could buy a brand new Porsche or a high-end Corvette for that price, both of which would absolutely smoke the DeLorean on any road. The first wave of cars arriving in the United States were so poorly built that the company had to set up specialized quality assurance centers at the ports just to fix them, before dealers could even see them. The iconic gull-wing doors leaked water every time it rained. The complex electrical systems would randomly short out, locking drivers inside their own vehicles because the power windows and doors would freeze shut. The alternator was completely underpowered, meaning if you turned on the headlights and the air conditioning at the same time, the battery would completely drain while you were driving down the highway. The beautiful brushed stainless steel skin looked amazing in photos, but it was a nightmare to maintain in the real world. Every single fingerprint left a permanent smudge, and if you got a dent in the body, it was almost impossible to fix without replacing the entire panel. By late 1981, the American economy hit a brutal recession. Car sales across the country completely tanked, and luxury sports cars were the hardest hit. DeLorean dealers were sitting on hundreds of unsold cars that nobody wanted. But instead of cutting back production, John made the insane decision to double production at the Northern Ireland plant. He honestly believed his own hype and thought the market would magically recover. This created a massive bottleneck. The company was burning through cash at a rate of several $million every single week. They owed millions to suppliers who were threatening to cut off parts. John desperately ran back to the British government, begging for another bailout. But this time, Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher said absolutely not. The British government realized they had poured over $100 million into a black hole, and they shut the financial valve completely off. With the British government out of the picture, John became completely desperate. He needed $20 million immediately to keep the factory doors open and stop the company from going into receivership. This is where the story shifts from a corporate failure to a true crime thriller. Enter James Hoffman, a former neighbor of John who also happened to be a paid FBI informant and an international drug smuggler. Hoffman contacted John and pitched a wild scheme. He claimed he could help John secure a massive amount of capital through a highly lucrative investment opportunity. That investment opportunity was a massive shipment of 100 kilos of Colombian cocaine. The plan was simple, high risk, and completely illegal. Buy the drugs cheap, sell them to American distributors, and net a quick $24 million profit. That money would go straight into saving the DeLorean Motor Company. Instead of walking away and reporting the crazy offer to the authorities, John took the bait. He was so consumed by his own ego and the desire to save his empire that he agreed to the deal. Over the course of several months in 1982, John met with undercover FBI agents posing as wealthy drug financiers. He signed paperwork pledging his controlling interest in the car company as collateral for the drug deal. He was completely all in. The trap finally snapped shut on October 19, 1982, at a hotel near the Los Angeles International Airport. An undercover agent showed John a suitcase packed with bricks of cocaine. John famously looked at the drugs, smiled, and said, "It is better than gold." Moments later, federal agents stormed the room and placed him under arrest. The news broke globally within hours, sending shockwaves through the entire business world. The moment the handcuffs slapped onto John DeLorean, the company was officially dead. The British government immediately placed the Northern Ireland factory into receivership and ordered it closed. Over 2,000 workers were laid off instantly, devastating an already struggling community. Investors watched their money completely evaporate. Unfinished car bodies were left sitting on the assembly line, and surplus parts were sold off for pennies on the dollar. In a bizarre twist of fate, some of the specialized manufacturing equipment, including the heavy stamping dies used to shape the stainless steel body panels, were literally dumped into the ocean off the coast of Ireland to be used as anchors for fish hatcheries. Out of the roughly 9,000 cars ever produced, thousands remained unsold, scattered across various ports and dealership lots across America. The grand dream had officially become a multi-million-dollar graveyard. The subsequent trial was an absolute media circus. John faced up to 60 years in federal prison for drug trafficking, but his defense team pulled off a legal miracle. They argued that the FBI had engaged in blatant entrapment. They proved that the government knew John was financially desperate and actively targeted him, orchestrating the entire drug deal from scratch. John had no prior criminal record and had never been involved in the drug trade before the informant approached him. After a long and grueling trial, the jury actually acquitted John on all charges in 1984. He walked out of the courtroom a free man, but his reputation was permanently destroyed. He spent the rest of his life fighting endless civil lawsuits from angry investors and creditors. He never built another car. And he filed for personal bankruptcy in 1999. Here is the ultimate irony of this entire saga. In 1985, just 1 year after John was acquitted, a little movie called Back to the Future hit theaters. The filmmakers originally planned to use a refrigerator as a time machine, but decided a cool-looking car would work better. They picked the DeLorean precisely because it looked like an alien spaceship, and because the company had just spectacularly collapsed, making the car a perfect pop culture joke. The massive success of the movie completely warped public perception. It transformed an underpowered, poorly built engineering failure into an immortal cultural icon. People forgot about the terrible suspension, the leaky doors, the missing millions, and the cocaine sting. They just saw the fire tracks and the flux capacitor. Hollywood gave John DeLorean the ultimate gift, a permanent rewrite of his legacy that completely masked the reality of his total failure. When you strip away the cinematic nostalgia, the story of the DeLorean is a dark cautionary tale about unchecked ego and corporate greed. John DeLorean promised a revolution but delivered an expensive, slow piece of stainless steel junk built on a foundation of lies and government subsidies. He risked the livelihoods of thousands of Irish workers and the fortunes of his investors just to maintain his personal fantasy of being an automotive god. $175 million of public and private money completely vanished into thin air, leaving behind nothing but a trail of broken promises and a suitcase full of white powder. The car did not take us to the future. It took everyone involved straight into bankruptcy court. The next time you see a silver DeLorean at a car show, remember the real story. It is not a time machine. It is the biggest automotive disaster of the 20th century.